All right. Happy Friday, everybody. It's Friday, May 26th. I'm really excited to have our guest on today on the Clear Channel. My name's Ken, and I am the founder of the Clear Channel. You know, our whole mission is to invite amazing people onto the channel, as well as share knowledge about how to be great in business and to fulfill our mission of changing the world one leader at a time. And I'm a little biased on our guest today. My wife, Sara, who has an incredible background, is joining us on our Clear Channel today. So, hi, honey. So, all right. So let me tell everybody a bit about you. So Sara, to kind of pump her tires a little bit, college athlete, was a heptathlete, Division I heptathlete at the University, Rutgers University in New Jersey. She graduated from the university back in 2001-ish. 2000. Oh boy. And then you had a variety of jobs, which I'm going to have her tell you all about it today, but was an entrepreneur, has started multiple different companies, and then is a proud mom of two incredible little boys. And I think my biggest sale in my life is getting her to say yes when I asked the question years ago. So, but Sara, do you want to tell a little bit about your background, about your story, about your career, where you're from, and for anyone that's going to be jumping on and watching this channel?
Can you hear me okay? Is the audio okay?
Good to go.
Okay. I hear an echo. Yeah, so I, just like Ken started, I graduated from Rutgers with a criminal justice major, and I started working out of college as a probation officer. And I thought that I wanted to go into some kind of FBI law enforcement. I quickly realized that wasn't for me, and I didn't know what else to do. I had an insurance investigation job after that. I saw layoffs happen very quickly in my career. In New Jersey, they laid off everybody in the company at State Farm. The entire state of New Jersey shut down. And at that point, I decided I could just pick up and move and start over and pretty much do whatever I wanted. We put everything we owned in the car with my roommate from school and just started driving. We didn't have a place to live and we didn't have a job. And it was kind of like that, well, I can do anything feeling. And it was a little bit scary, but also really exciting, because I realized I didn't have to do what I decided in college that I wanted to do. And I think we counted, I had about 26 different jobs before starting and running an office. The interesting part about that is, I kept searching for what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And Ken, I don't know if you want me to go into that part, but I picked around a lot of different jobs, and I started in California in Matt Osborne's office. I actually walked into the office. So I feel like I'm 80 years old when I tell these stories, because the internet was not necessarily something you would do to apply for jobs. Like, you kind of did, but my dad always taught me you print your resume out and you walk into companies. So I went business to business with my resume, and I actually had a portfolio because I was also a graphic designer. And I thought, well, maybe they'll have a need for that too, because of course they're a marketing firm. Of course they need graphic designers. So I walked in with my portfolio to Matt's office and asked for an interview. And they said, nobody's here right now. And I didn't take no for an answer. And I was like looking around the office. I was like, nobody's here. And they said, no, but I can give you an interview tomorrow. And I said, okay, fine, I'll take an interview. And when I got the job, I remembered I cried, but not in a good way. They're like, what's wrong? You didn't get the job? I'm like, no, I did. And it's sales, but it's not sales. There's a lot of growth, but it's sales. They're like, you need to go eat something. So I remember telling my parents, I saw this girl do one sale. I don't know anything about sales, but I think I could do 2 a day. And at the end of 6 months, if I haven't learned something, I'll just quit. And pretty quickly, I learned that if I wasn't learning something, it was because I decided not to learn something. So that led to about a 7-year journey of running an office, promoting out offices, and moving all around the country, which I love to do. You don't always have to do that, but I enjoy moving. And then I was in California, and I realized I wanted to adjust some of what I was doing and learn from different people. And I had been doing websites and SEO, which wasn't a thing back then, believe it or not. Like, there were no bombs. Nobody was really writing press releases or putting up posts. So I found that I could fill that gap, and I ended up with about 13 clients and said, oh, I'm going to do that for a while, work from home. And then I also had the opportunity to work directly for the broker. And very similarly, just changed my role a lot because I get really antsy if I feel like I've learned everything and then I want to change it again. And I recognize a gap. I want to solve that problem. So I did a lot of different roles as well. And yeah, now I'm a campaign manager for 2 programs. But I've done a lot of the different things. I feel like I like to get aware of all aspects. I worked in IT for about 5 years at Sidcord as well. So yeah, so I kind of gave an overview. I know you've got questions, so I tried not to answer every single one of the questions you might have in my story. So you can start with that. Oh, you're on, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I threw myself on mute there. So tell me about the story about the jobs. I think a lot of people that are not just in our office here in Michigan, but across the country that watch a channel in some offices, they unfortunately they go through some changes and then some challenges, and the idea of like doing the same job for the rest of your life, it doesn't happen in this opportunity, right? So do you mind sharing a little bit about that story? Because I think that's a good one.
Yeah, I remembered having this feeling when, they ask you what you want to do when you grow up, right? They start asking you that at like 13 and you start saying an answer. And I remember my answer because my dad was like, you're really good at debating and arguing. You should be a lawyer. Because we argued a lot over things. I defended why I needed to go to the mall by myself, or I made really good arguments for that. He's like, you should be a lawyer. I was like, that's cool. He was an FBI agent. His path seemed safe. I think we look at our parents maybe and we look at like, was it safe or not safe, and we're either motivated towards or away from it. And I was like, oh, and when I mean safe, I was like, that was secure. That's something we thought about back then. And so that's why I took that path. But very quickly, being a probation officer, I realized I didn't want to carry a gun. And I don't know where I thought that I could move that path, and avoid that. I'm really clumsy if anybody knows me. So I just am very afraid of that. And so I was like, well, that's not what I want to do. And it was
you would totally shoot somebody on accident.
Oh, yeah. It's most likely my foot, right? Or like myself. So, can you mute? Okay. So then I went to insurance investigation, and I was in State Farm. And after 9/11, I just remember walking in one day and everybody was panicked. I was like the youngest person there. And a lot of people had been working there for about 15 to 20 years. This was their only job. They started when they were 20. It was their only role. And it's very specific. It's not a very versatile role. It's literally insurance. Like, that's what you know. That's what you do. That's your skill set. And I watched all these people panicking, and I was like, what's going on? And they said they're shutting down all of State Farm in New Jersey. And I just felt this fear, like I can't be in a niche job. I can't be doing something that if that were to happen to me, I would be in a pool of unemployment around thousands of people who also have this niche job and insurance, right? Like at 45, I did not want to have one skill. And so when I moved to California, I had that fear a little bit, but I was trying to answer the question, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I worked in PR. I worked in the art department in movies. I worked as a graphic designer. I was a substitute teacher, a trainer at a gym. I literally was like, is this what I want to do with the rest of my life? Is this what I want to do? And after, a month or two at every one of the roles, it was like, this is it. I'm like, okay, what else? Like, what's next? They're like, well, you learned it. Now you do it. And I was like, oh man, I felt like I would literally walk around the studio because my job and if you know anything about working in movies, your job as a PA is your first role, which is a production assistant and a runner. You literally go grocery shopping or you go pick up blueprints. And I would read books as I was walking around Paramount Studio because I was like, I'm becoming less intelligent as we speak. So I need to like keep myself somehow learning. And I remembered feeling like, I need a job that's going to teach me something because I think I'm going to change my mind a lot. And that's why when I started in this role, I was like, I don't care what I'm doing as long as I'm learning, because I don't ever really want to answer the question, what do I want to do when I grow up? Or what I want to do with the rest of my life? I want to constantly change. And I remember Matt saying this as I'm in a meeting once, and it really hit home to me. He's like, that's a good thing, because what was important to you at 13, right? Think about the things that are important to you at 13. It's like going to the movies by yourself or going to the mall. I'm hopefully evolved, even though I do love malls. I've hopefully evolved to not that being the most important thing in my life. And what I loved about our business when I came in was, if I wanted to do the entry level role for the rest of my life, I probably shouldn't have been here. So if it was like, hey, if you want to do sales for the rest of your life, you probably shouldn't be here. Then they're like, well, do I want to be a manager for the rest of my life? Well, that wasn't the role either. Do I want to be a consultant for that? That's also not the role. So when I got into management, I changed my job every day. I was like, I'm going to do HR today. I'm going to go do some phone calls. I'm going to write press releases today. I'm going to be a sales trainer today. I'm going to be a coach today. And I had that ability to do that. And I feel like then ultimately creating a brand for myself that I would get shit done, I then had other opportunities and other doors open for me. So that was like, I think I let go of that fear of what do I want to do with the rest of my life and just started taking paths that would teach me things, because I ultimately knew people were going to pay me for two things, either how much labor I put in or how much I knew. And I wanted to get paid for how much I knew, because I knew as I get older, I wouldn't have the energy to put the labor in, the physical labor. So I knew I needed to learn something that people were interested in paying me to know, which was people. And so I feel like that's something that I hadn't done in other roles. I didn't know I had to involve or influence people in any way. But if I didn't learn how to influence people, I was only as valuable as myself. But if I could help other people and impact other people, I was as valuable as how many people I could impact. So I don't know if that answered that. But.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, so again, to brag a little bit, your business you ran for numerous years was $1 million company. Yeah, how many years was it over $1 million in business? Like
probably close to it many years, but I don't have the math.
All right, so you run $1 million company. You're I think at the peak of your office in Philadelphia, you had 60 people working for you, right? So a ton of challenges of leading and coaching and supporting people. A lot of times, young people in business struggle with themselves first, and then also managing others. Any thoughts around tips for leadership? Tips as people are building teams and learning how to lead and manage others?
Yes. One thing that I remembered that really clicked, there's a couple of things. One thing that really clicked for me, when I first started leading people, I was kind of taking their lead instead, right? So if I was like, hey, I think you could learn this. I can help you. Do you want to meet with me? When's good for you? If you can't make it, that's okay. And I was literally like letting them lead, and that's not what they needed. Like a good coach, and if you've played sports, a good coach doesn't say, would you like to do the extra laps, or would you like to do the extra workout? They tell you what the extra workout is, they show up for you, and then they're there, whether you're there or not. And I remembered thinking, like, we would do team nights or crew nights, right? And in the beginning, I would be, hey, do you want to do crew night on Tuesday? And then someone would say yes. And then I'd go to the next person, does Tuesday work for you? And they'd say no. And then I'd be like, okay, well, it doesn't work for him. We should change it. And I was very wishy-washy about it. And I learned that I was just, hey, I'm going to do this. I'll be there either way. If you can join, perfect, but I'll be there either way. And that would be anything like, hey, I want, I'd love to meet you for coffee to help you go over your product knowledge or your pitch. I'll be there on Sunday at 5. Either way, if you're there or not, I'll be there for you. And I just remembered showing up. And what that did was they realized, well, she's going to show up anyway. I might as well go. Versus me trying to like just help them decide what day works for you, what day works. And it was like very frustrating. It's almost like having that friend that like, you want to go out to dinner? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, you pick the place. I'm like, just tell me where to show up. I'd love you to pick the place, show up, maybe even pick me up. That's great. But I realized I was just going to show up even when I didn't know if everybody else was, right? Hey, you said you wanted to go to the gym tomorrow. I'm going either way. I'll be there. That way it was like they recognized I set this trend that I was just going to be accountable for everything I said I was going to do. And there's definitely times where it's like both people say, hey, we're going to the gym on Sunday. And you might have been there before, right? Where you're like, hey, we're going to the gym on Sunday. And then Sunday morning goes around and be like, hey, are you still going? Oh, I don't know. Are you still going? I mean, we don't have to go. Nope. I stopped doing that altogether. They're like, are you still going? I was like, yeah. I wasn't sure if I was go. Cool. I'll be there either way. So to me, that was one thing. It's like just showing up either way, no matter what, and not letting other people's decisions of whether or not they were going to show up sway you set such a great example. And you take all the pressure off the other person to feel like they're making a decision or burdening you with anything. And then the second thing is just like an epiphany moment that I talk about a lot was just the system, that especially the 4s and the 5s, about how I went 9 months saying, if I just do sales long enough, they'll start teaching me the management stuff. And it's like the Karate Kid moment, right? Where I'm like waxing on, waxing off. I'm like, when are they going to teach me how to defend myself? And I was reading a book one day. I was reading 1 Minute Manager, and I'm like, oh my God, they're using impulse factors in here. And then I'm standing in a meeting, and my manager was saying, yeah, like, so Tom, he went out there and did $1,000 this week. What he was doing was showing up early and meeting with people. And I was like, I had this feeling of, I want to show up early. I want to meet with people, realizing that he was using Jones effect. He was coaching me on other people's successes or failures. I was like, that's Jones effect. And fear of loss is educating people on the consequences of their behavior. So I realized that the 4s and the 5s are how to have a crucial conversation. The 5s are how to run a meeting, how to deal with a client. When that clicked to me, I actually realized I was learning the management stuff. And if I actually used it with pure intentions, I would build a team and a really strong one. And from that moment on, 9 weeks later, I was an assistant manager. 10 after that, I was running an office. And then just the rest is history from there. So, yeah.
Love it. Love it. It's so interesting, right? Because people, again, it's perspective. They don't often see the things they're doing and what it means to their long term until somebody points it out to them. So tell us, I know we talked last night a little bit about, want to share about relationships a little bit. So, you and I, in our relationship, we haven't always been on the same page, right? You have a certain love language. I have certain love languages. How do you handle, people in business and relationships? And obviously we have 2 boys now. Life's not easy all the time. And most people know that we've been through a lot over the last 10 years. So any thoughts around relationships and how to keep our head above water and keep growing?
Okay. So thanks for muting. Yeah, I think the thing that we learned too, which is I feel like a really interesting thing, is that relationships have to be intentional too and planned, right? Because for so long, especially when you don't have a lot of responsibility, things just happen. You can like be spending time with people and you don't have to plan it. And as we took on more responsibility, we had to plan it. We had to focus on specific time with each other and really prioritize things. And that's something that people think, oh, that's not natural, but it really is. Like you have to, if you want to maintain anything as you grow, it has to be intentional. So I think that, I don't know if that helps you, but I feel like that is a huge thing where people think the relationships just aren't working, but it's really, they're not working at the relationship. And I think that's something that we've learned, and it's just an important piece, is just the planning and the structure. Because we even catch ourselves sometimes being like, oh, wait, we'll talk about that later. And we're like, no, let's plan when we're going to talk about that later. Because if we just keep saying we'll talk about it later, and we're talking about like the kids' camp or the things that we have to talk about for making decisions for the children or ourselves, we literally have to be like, okay, at 9, are you free at 9? We'll talk about it then. And that's just something that it works. And if you do that, it doesn't feel like work. I think that's the difference.
And so to have some fun here, what's something about me that drives you crazy?
Okay. Where is my list here? You want me to say? I have one, but it actually ties to what I would talk about too, but just not multitasking. Ken is not a great multitasker, and you have to recognize that if he's looking down at a phone, you can't ask him a question because it won't get answered. So there has to be like a little bit of song and dance, like eyes up. All right, now I can ask you a question.
All right, that's fair. You got me there. So we've had some tough times. We've had some tough times having children. We had some tough times, with our families and lots of changes there. 2-3 years ago, in a random day, we got a phone call that the entire school system was going virtual. We had to shift the boys to being in private schools, like in a matter of a day or two. What do you appreciate most about this opportunity for us as a family?
I really do appreciate the freedom, the choices, the autonomy we have, the ability to, the built-in support system we have. It's a family. I love that because we don't have family here, and some kids, don't have family. And so I love that. I was talking to somebody the other day in one of the offices in Florida, and they were just asking about even like Vera and Gary. And I was like, they're like my family. This is a big family. And I was, talking to other consultants, and I just realized how much I appreciate the relationships we've built over 20 years. These are people that I've known almost half my life. I've seen their children grow up. We've been to weddings of their children. Like, it's just exciting. To me, that's the biggest piece I appreciate, is just the family, the support. Everyone in your office, the people that take care of our children so that we can have those and some of those experiences. I really, really appreciate. And I try, obviously it's a family because I trust them with my children, right? Tanya watched our children yesterday with Jared, and John are always watching. Jason, Sanjay, I appreciate all that. Taylor, and many more. So
totally. Yeah, we lost you. It was kind of ironic. It paused in a perfect picture. I'll make sure that they edit that time out.
So many of those.
So finish that story. So, we business wasn't in a great spot, and you had to be honest with me, share with everyone how a great partner keeps their significant other accountable.
Yeah, I don't know if you shared this part at all, but I thought I would do it indirectly by putting together like a calendar. I was like, well, let's make this fun. We'll put a calendar together. I put like pictures of the boys on it, and I put things that I knew he was like, his goals. And every night I'd be like, you can fill it out. See, like you can put what your production was and how many interviews you took this week. It's so cool. And he would like he hated it. I know, like I could tell he would be like writing it on there. And I was like, and you can put it there. I mean, I don't care if you did a 0 today, it's cool. But like and so, it didn't go very well. After a couple of weeks, I was like, it's just 6 weeks. Just go in the field for 6 weeks. Ed did it. You can do it. And finally he wasn't doing it. And I was like, I've got to be really honest. Like, you're working really hard, but I'm not sure you're working that smart. And you're spending a lot of time away, which I love and I'm totally cool with. But is it worth it for what you're doing, right? I don't mean the business. I meant you have to be busy doing something that makes a difference and that's worth it. Because otherwise you're missing out on Brady's time and Brady growing up. And you have to be the one to explain to him that this was what you were doing. Instead of being with him, you chose this. And this is not taking you anywhere. And it didn't really lead to anything because this was what you did with your time instead of spending time with him. So if you're going to do this, it needs to be worth it. And you need to be working smart. And so, at that moment, I didn't know if it hit home. I was just kind of like, got that off my chest. And then, I think it did make a difference because the business is worth it if you're smart about your time, right? And what you're doing with it. I was like, go to the field, come home at midnight. I don't care, but don't be coming home at 8 after sitting in the office all day, just looking and twiddling your thumbs, right? So that was my mindset of it. If you're going to do it, but don't just put the time in without the actual work and effort.
So the translation of that conversation, what was I heard after all of this was, if you don't make critical changes in your actions on a daily basis, that 10 years from now, I'm not going to be the person that's going to tell the boys about the life they could have had. That's on you. And, I walked away with tears in my eyes. And the reality is, there was so many moving parts in the business. I wasn't focused on revenue generating things for the business. I was spending time kind of building out processes and things that I could have delegated and empowered other people to do instead of driving behavior to grow the business and grow the organization. And a lot of that time of my career was actually being in the field, training salespeople and taking them under my wing myself. So obviously there's different seasons, but so I appreciate you for that, babe. I love you. Obviously we built a incredible life together. Any final thoughts for anyone that's gonna be watching the channel and anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, and this is something I started to realize more recently, people have asked me things like, how do you do it all? Or how do you be a mom? And because the kids are about to walk in like an hour, right? They're about to come barreling through this house and I'm working. So I saw initially when I was running a business, when I was doing what Ken was doing too, I thought being busy meant success. Like as long as I'm not lazy or as long as I'm working really hard. And I thought that meant I had to do all things at once and like work for, 12-hour days and try to juggle it all. And even more recently, I started realizing the juggling wasn't successful. The juggling and like being a martyr to myself and the situation wasn't the right path. And I realized if I just stopped what I was doing and focused on one thing, I was way more impactful at both things. So one example, and I think this applies to anything you do, but one example, the children come home at 3:45 normally. Today's a half day. And I purposefully I used to be like, oh, they're coming home, they're self-sufficient, they'll get on their iPad, they'll probably have a snack. And I would be like, cool, yeah, I can do calls. And they would come in and with all this energy and wanting to tell me something, but I'm on a Zoom call and they're like, but mommy, just one thing. And I'm like, and we just became an hour long, me trying to calm them after getting frustrated and me calming down. And now I realize I don't have to do all things at once. And I don't make calls between 3:45 and 4:15. I'm off the phone. And I sit out in the front and I wait for them to come in. I sit on the porch with them. We have a conversation And then after that, they don't want to talk to me anymore. They want to go play on their iPad and go eat the snack, and they don't want to interrupt me. And I go back to what I'm doing. And that was a huge lesson for me more recently is I don't halfway get my attention into three things at once. I thought that was really cool. And look at me being like juggling all these plates. And I realized I was frustrated and not at my best at any of them. And then I started feeling defeated. And I realized if I segmented my time better, and I think that applies to the jobs you guys are doing right now, the relationships that you have, where we are like sometimes even recruiters, we were talking about this yesterday on a recruiter call. They think they're doing a great job, like sitting at home, pulling database, watching TV and sitting with it. They're much more effective if they just take devoted time to do that task and then devoted time with their significant other or devoted time chilling out, like literally chilling out and doing nothing but watching a Netflix show. That's more impactful than trying to do all three at once because literally your body is frustrated by all three things happening and too overwhelming. So that would be my advice. And I feel like that's really helping me. I wish I had learned that a little sooner, but that it didn't, being superwoman doesn't mean like I have, and I literally had the baby on my chest, doing a conference call, doing an Excel spreadsheet. I thought that was cool. And it was cool for like 5 minutes. And I realized if I spread it out, it'd be way better. So.
Yeah. And I think you've done obviously you've shared this with me, right? And I've tried to do that myself, and I hope I've improved since we've talked about it. But, I know it's a common challenge to try to deal with the kids and deal with work and then, calls, etc. But, interesting thing about.
I'm going to say one thing. I'm just going to say one thing, just to tie it back to that. When I teach the 8s, 5s, and 4s, when I get to working a full day, this is where I believe it was, there was an owner who did this meeting and they talked about working a full day. And I used to think working a full day meant working a full day, like 24 hours. As much work as you could put into that 24 hours meant you were great and you were doing your job. And he used the example of a toothpaste. So if you're squeezing the toothpaste out, there's the little machine, little like gadget, right? Where you squeeze every little bit out, or you're like my children that do this and squeeze like where not all of it comes out. And my interpretation of that when I started to realize it was working a full day means giving 100% of your energy to what you're supposed to be focusing on at that moment. So I'm 100% focused on this right now. I'm not trying to do an email, focused on this. And then when my kids get home, I'm 100% focused on them and I'm giving my full energy to them. And if I can maintain that as best as possible, and it's not always happening, that's success. So, okay, sorry, go ahead, your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll tell you, of all the different things that happen in a day, I know just with our boys, they want us to lay with them at the end of the day. That 3 minutes, that 5 minutes, the 15 minutes, just to kind of review their day. We talk about some things about they liked about their day, or they just want to tell a little something that happened that day. Of everything, all the trips we've taken them on, and we're going to South America next month. We've traveled to Mexico last month, kind of stuff. We've done lots of cool things. They just want our time. Right? They don't want any of the stuff. They don't want any of the other, yes, they like golfing. Yes, they like all of it. But at the end of the day, they just want our time. So kind of relates to all of that. All right. Well, Sara, thank you for coming on a channel today. I love you very much. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom. I'm super proud of you. And you're I have to admit, the hottest guest I've had on the channel this year, and just in general, for the record. But thank you, everybody, jumping on. Please subscribe, jump on the Clear channel, share it with friends and family. Appreciate your time. Any final thoughts, Sara?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a happy Friday. Thank you.
Bye.